led to believe that this person was genuinely transgender, and then after they went back to being a man, they were just being really crude and saying like, oh yeah, you know, I was at a bar the other night and I took some chick home and I f***ed her, ha ha ha.
Wow.
Oh, I actually had my penis the entire time, ha ha ha.
I think it's safe to state that Lemieux is a compulsive liar. We have proof of it. So maybe he was indeed terminated by the Halton board, or maybe this was just another fib to elicit sympathy from Sarah and others. Who knows? Much like Jason Voorhees, the Goldie Mask-clad knife man of Friday the 13th fame, just when you think you've heard the last of Kerry Lemieux, well, he comes bouncing back into the news cycle. Now, Lemieux emerged as the most infamous shop teacher in the world back in September 2022 when he showed up to class in such an outlandish getup it would have made a drag queen blush. His costume included a long blonde wig, skin-tight bicycle shorts, a clinging white top, and gee, I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, those giant fake Z-cup boobs. Incredibly, Lemieux was also tolerated and practically celebrated as an example of diversity by the woke joke educrats who comprise the Halton District School Board. As far as the so-called conservative education minister of the day, Stephen Lecce, well, the cowardly Lecce proved to be about as useful as tits on a bull, as the saying goes. Alas, the beginning of the end regarding Lemieux's cosplay saga had very much to do with Rebel News exposing his fraudulent behavior. You see, one of the few on-the-record interviews Lemieux ever offered was to the New York Post. And what an interview! Lemieux claimed that those Z-cup mammary glands weren't props, but rather the result of a very rare medical condition. They were real, and he was completely powerless to do anything about this alleged disability. No, seriously, Frankenboob was playing the handicap card. Well, that worked just fine and dandy, at least with the dunces running the education system in Ontario, until we bumped into Lemieux at a Burlington shopping mall in April 2023. Do you remember this encounter for the ages?
This is the lady wearing your breasts. I thought your breasts were real. Where are your breasts? Why are you dressing inappropriately in front of children?
Now, after this expose, Lemieux's house of cards came tumbling down. Eventually, he parted ways with the Halton District School Board. But was he terminated or did he resign? We have no idea for sure. Even though the HDSB has a media relations department, they never communicate with the media, even though this school board is a taxpayer-funded entity that should be beholden to transparency. Likewise, we've sent numerous emails to Lemieux to get his side of the story, but he has never accepted our offers. Fast forward to September 2023, and Lemieux suddenly reemerges at a new school in a different school board district, namely the Hamilton-Wentworth District School Board. But this time, the he who presented as a she was back to being a he again. Gone were the fake breasts and the stripper attire. Lemieux was literally a new man, disposing of those Z-cups and donning male haberdashery. Now, for more than a year, the Lemieux saga went silent, but then a few months ago, Lemieux reemerged in full drag mode. We came across these photos of Lemieux posted on an online dating site. As you can see, it's the female version of Lemieux. And check out this recent shot of Lemieux shopping in Niagara Falls, again, in full drag queen regalia. Hey, what someone does in their personal time is their business. Which is to say, folks, I love Halloween too, but I only celebrate it once a year. Yet the question arises, Is Lemieux wearing this getup in class again? Now, you'd think that would be a very easy query to answer. It's either yes or no, but the useless principal at Nora Francis Henderson Secondary School in Hamilton, Tom Fisher, and the spokesthingies at the school board won't even acknowledge our queries. We have phoned, we have emailed, we've even paid personal visits, and mum's the word, no pun intended. That's crazy. This is a fair question. This is an important question. So why, oh why, the lack of transparency? But a few days ago, a former friend of Lemieux reached out to Rebel News. This was indeed a major development, given that all during the Lemieux saga, a missing piece of the puzzle was that nobody in the media was ever able to track down a friend or family member of this individual until now. Here's the skinny. Sarah, not her real name, is a gender studies graduate. She can be seen in this photo with Lemieux, which was taken by a passerby and shared online. Sarah did not want to come on camera, but she consented to an audio interview. We're going to play excerpts of that interview, and what she has to say about Lemieux is nothing short of fascinating. For starters, Sarah initially made contact with Lemieux on a website called Bumble BFF.
I came across the profile of Kayla Lemieux, and I thought that it was like a parody account, like a satire account, right? But I decided to write on them anyway. And I started talking to this person who was supposedly Kayla Lemieux. And the more I started talking to them, the more I realized that it was the real person, right?
Okay.
And, she honestly seemed really nice. Like a really nice person. And we hung out in real life a few times. And, it was kind of awkward because, pictures were taken of me with Lemieux that were, sent to the media. So now when you, Google Kayla Lemieux, there's, a photo of me that comes up, which is, pretty awkward.
Of course, we can't ignore those elephants in the room, can we? So why, pray tell, was Lemieux wearing those enormous prosthetic breasts, especially if he was legitimately trying to present himself as a bona fide female?
What was behind that, if he was legitimately trying to become female?
Okay, so one of my first questions was, and the thing is, I've had, friends who are transgender over the years, right? And, obviously, what was going on with the huge prosthetic breasts was, very, intriguing to me because I couldn't tell if it was, some kind of social commentary, some kind of social statement, and I couldn't tell if, maybe this person was actually, far right, and they were, doing this to make, a social statement about how trans rights have gone too far, right? I also wondered if maybe this person is, a male fetishist, and they're just, getting off on, wearing, fetish gear in public and at a, public school with minors, and that sort of thing. But the third hypothesis I had was that maybe this person is going through some kind of, identity crisis, and maybe they are genuinely transgender, but they're doing something to be, very provocative about it for some reason I don't really understand.
Sarah goes on to say that when Lemieux spoke, he presented himself in a very feminine way, which led her to originally believe that perhaps Lemieux was really trying to transition from male to female. Still, why did Lemieux find it necessary to make such a spectacle of himself?
At the time, Lemieux was claiming that the breasts were real and that they had gigantomastia,
yes,
which is a condition that causes someone to have enormous breasts. And obviously this is not true, but I was just kind of like accepting the lie to just kind of like, you know, not cause problems in the friendship or not to be rude or, you know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, it's interesting you mention that because one of the few on-the-record interviews he gave, I believe that was with the New York Post, and he made that outrageous claim. It was proven false. A lot of observers have said, you know, really isn't that kind of grounds for dismissal with cause, because he was basically claiming a medical condition, a disability, if you would. It'd be kind of like saying, you know, I need to park in the handicap spot because, you know, I don't have the full use of my legs, and then you find out, you know, the person's jogging on a treadmill. But you know, I'm curious how he got away with that, because it seems that at least the school board, they don't take him to task for, you know, what was obviously a lie.
Yeah, so, like now, in the present year, 2024, we're starting to see, like, a major pushback against the trans movement, and I'm, like, politically, I'm pro-trans to a certain extent. I think that, like, the movement had gone, like, way too far, like, over the last few years. And I think that, like, you know, these like, institutions in society, like the school board, for example, I think they would have been, like, just too terrified about, you know, getting sued or, like, trans rights activists coming after them if they, you know, did fire this person on the grounds that they were, you know, like, doing what they were doing, right?
My take, folks, I believe the fetish/mental illness argument, and given that Lemieux has a job which requires him to be involved with minors, that's downright disturbing.
You know, I have a degree in gender studies myself, and I studied psychology, and I think that was partly what drew me to this person. It was trying to understand them from the perspective of someone who, you know, has a degree in gender studies and who's, you know, studied psychology. I was, like, just very curious about what was going on. And, you know, I think that there is, like, a fetishistic component, but I don't think that's the entirety of it.
At this point, I mentioned to Sarah that during the Lemieux Odyssey, Rebel News was criticized by some viewers who were absolutely convinced Lemieux was punking the woke school board and that he should be hailed as a hero, not denounced as a villain for doing so. And indeed, folks, that was one of my original theories regarding his unspoken motivation, that he was taking the piss out of wokeism. Until, that is, a source reached out to me and provided us with this photo. This photograph was allegedly taken before the Lemieux controversy erupted in September 2022. The setting is a Burlington theater, and on this day, a private dance recital for girls aged 8 to 12 was being staged. Only the dancers and their parents and guardians were allowed to attend. It was closed to the public. But somehow, during intermission, Lemieux sneaked in and sat in the very first row. A young dancer came on to perform, and as you can well imagine, several of the mothers noticed Lemieux. I mean, how can you not notice him? And after the dance number was over, I was told that the mothers went down to where Lemieux was seated, and they asked him if he had a child at the event. Lemieux said he did not, so the mothers politely asked Lemieux to leave, and he did so. But my source informed me that when Lemieux was confronted, it was noticeable that he was, how shall I say this politely, in a state of male arousal. Does this not give you the creeps? It's downright gasp-inducing for me, folks. But the point is, does this incident sound like it is part and parcel of a prank? I don't think so. In any event, I asked Sarah what Lemieux was like as a person.
When they were living as a woman, they were quite polite and nice and cheerful. They would talk from the perspective as though they were a biological woman, for example. So even though this person, Kayla Lemieux, is 6'2", they would mention how they would feel unsafe at night and how it should be legal for women to carry pepper spray in case someone tries to attack them. And, they would talk about, how, dating is hard and, you get your feelings hurt because all men care about is sex. And, they would talk from the perspective that sounded like the perspective of a normal, real woman, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Lemieux was simply presenting himself as just one of the gals, really. And he even claimed that he had bottom surgery, which is to say that his penis had been surgically sliced and diced to kind of look like a vagina now. But get this, when Lemieux eventually reverted to being male again, not only did those boobs come off, but so did the kid gloves, which is to say, in full male mode, a very different persona emerged. Suddenly, Lemieux was no longer very ladylike in his mannerisms. Indeed, he was vulgar, crude, and belligerent.
With Lemieux, I honestly got the sense that, a lot of what they were saying while they were trans was not true. Because they would tell me that they, so number one, they had told the news media initially that they were intersex. And then when you told me that they had their male genitalia removed, sex reassignment surgery, and they claimed that when they started taking hormones, their breasts became very large, and they developed gigantomastia.
Yes.
But then, when Kayla Lemieux reverted to being a man, it was suddenly the breasts were never real. I a woman I met at a bar the other night, so clearly they had their penis the entire time. But when they reverted to being a man, they were basically oh, haha, you believe that? No, they were never, the breasts were never real. I never had my penis removed, and of course I never believed it, but I was kind of well, we're supposed to be friends and you were lying to me. I will say that's kind of funny is that while Lemieux was presenting as a woman, she would complain that quote-unquote creepy guys had been hitting on her. Which is, it's funny for them to be accusing other people of being creepy, it's kind of funny, right?
Well, fancy that. Meanwhile, what did Lemieux think about the worldwide media attention he was generating? Well, like all things Lemieux, folks, it's complicated.
He more or less was kind of acting like a victim amidst it, saying the media is harassing me when I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just a woman who happens to have large breasts, and the media keeps harassing me, and I'm really upset because people are, sending me vicious messages. But then after they went back to being a man, they said, I'm surprised I wasn't featured on South Park.
This specimen is really amazing, isn't it? He blatantly lies. He complains about the media victimizing him. But wouldn't it be so cool if South Park featured him in an episode or two? Where would a psychiatrist even begin when it comes to analyzing Kerry Lemieux? Speaking of which, I did ask Sarah if Lemieux does indeed need psychological help. Spoiler alert, is there salt water in the Pacific Ocean?
I have to say, number one, I was pretty upset that initially I was led to believe that this person was genuinely transgender, and then after they went back to being a man, they were just being really crude and saying oh yeah, I was at a bar the other night and I took some chick home and I f***ed her, ha ha ha.
Wow.
Oh, I actually had my penis the entire time, ha ha ha. And that sort of made me feel like my trust in this person had been betrayed in a way, because it was kind of hurtful, because it was I assumed that this was some victimized transgender person.
Wow. And now that this information is being made public, I wonder if the schools and the school boards and the teachers' unions and even the useless Lecce still think it was a great idea to go to bat for this loon. Meanwhile, what did Lemieux's friends and family members have to say about his shenanigans? Well, here's what Sarah had to say.
His family members were disapproving, but not harshly so. So they didn't like what Lemieux was doing, but it wasn't to the point that they were gonna cut him off. So yeah, and I honestly have no idea what was going on with the friend situation. Lemieux would send me pictures and videos of themselves just casually hanging out at bars with the fake breasts and everything, having fun, drinking and watching a sports game and stuff, as if it was just a totally normal thing. It was all very confusing to me, which I think was partly why I was interested in getting to know this person, because it was just so baffling, and I kind of having an intellectual challenge.
Oh, Lemieux is an intellectual challenge, all right. Although I don't think even Sherlock Holmes and the kids from Scooby-Doo could solve this gender-bending mystery. In any event, Sarah had a falling out with Lemieux about a year ago, and they are no longer communicating. This was due to Sarah's trust being violated, and the fact that Lemieux, in reality, wasn't merely a de rigueur dude, but rather he was a full-fledged male chauvinist pig.
Yeah, we don't talk anymore. I'd say we stopped talking a year ago. They just went back to being a man. They were living life exactly like a man would, in a way that kind of was disgusting to me, because I was I don't want to hear these crude details about women you're having sex with while you're male and that sort of thing.
And again, the most pressing question arises: is this new age Mrs. Dress Up doing his cosplay shtick in front of minors at his new school again.
So basically what Lemieux told me, about a year and a half ago was that they had lost their job at, I think it was the Halton Regional School or whatever, because the school board found out that this person had been going out in public dressed as presenting as a man and only coming to the school dressed up in the transgender outfit. And so it sounded to me like Lemieux got fired for that. I can't confirm that he was fired because I just don't remember the language clearly enough, but it sounded to me like they had been fired because the school saw these pictures of them out and about as a man. And so they kind of suggested to me that due to needing to get a new job at another school, they were going to go back to being a man.
Now, if Lemieux was indeed fired by the HDSB, this makes for incredible news. Again, folks, we continue to be stymied when it comes to obtaining information from the school boards about Lemieux. It's all due to the old chestnut of privacy and confidentiality. So the school boards simply won't talk about Lemieux or any other teacher for that matter. Even so, I think it's safe to state that Lemieux is a compulsive liar. We have proof of it. So maybe he was indeed terminated by the Halton board. Or maybe this was just another fib to elicit sympathy from Sarah and others. Who knows? But the lack of honesty and transparency from the educrats is nothing short of outrageous and egregious. In any event, let's just assume for a minute that Lemieux is indeed telling the truth for a change, that he was fired with cause by the Halton board for lying about a non-existent medical condition. Now the question is this: how in the world did the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board look at this lying liar nutbar and say, wow, Lemieux is the right stuff. We gotta have Boobzilla teaching our kids. It's batshite crazy, folks. Bottom line, if Sarah is being sincere and honest with me, and I have absolutely no reason to believe that she's not being sincere and honest, then the story of Busty Lemieux has nothing whatsoever to do with transgenderism. And it is not a story of somebody playing a prank either. Rather, this is a story that would appear to be about someone struggling with severe mental health issues. And yet, this man is allowed to be in the company of minors? That's gross. That's irresponsible. It might even prove to be dangerous. So tell me, folks, who do you have more contempt for? Someone who might very well be mentally ill and desperately in need of treatment? Or the educrats, from the principals and the school boards and the Ministry of Education and the teachers' unions, all of whom have little problem with Lemieux, all in the ludicrous and mistaken belief that this guy is a textbook example of diversity, equity, and inclusion. Hey folks, what an outrage. By all indications, Busty Lemieux is on the prowl again. If you feel like we do, please go to stopclassroomgrooming.com. That's stopclassroomgrooming.com. Maybe the woke school boards and the woke administrators, they think having someone who might indeed be mentally ill on staff is a good thing in terms of DEI. We do not. Again, go to stopclassroomgrooming.com.